Hello everyone and welcome back to Circus Tutorials. In today's tutorial we'll be teaching you how to throw a knife. So what knives to throw? I have a couple different examples here of throwing knives you can get. I have this silver one that's a 10-inch one. This next silver one is about a 9. This black one I believe is about an 8, and I don't like this one, and we'll get to that in a moment. As well as this one that I also don't like, that is about a 6-inch blade. So the reason I don't like these ones is this one has an edge on the blade. It's actually kind of sharp and you could use it for cutting. All these other ones do not. We do not want a blade on the edge of our knives because we want to be holding it by that end in certain situations. This one has an edge on it and I need to dull it down if I actually want to use it. So right now I don't like this one and I don't use it for knife throwing. The reason I don't like this one is because it's too small and too light. I can't get a good grip on it and it doesn't feel good in my hand. And if it misses, it bounces and just goes all over the place. So I do not like this one either. These two, however, are nice in my hands. They feel good and like I actually have something behind them. They have a good weight so they stick very easy. And they're dull on both sides so I can grab on the blade edge as well as the handle. Get knives that are made for throwing. Don't just use household knives or kitchen knives. They can work, but they're not meant for it and they are not beefy enough and they will tend to break. In fact, I used a juggling knife for throwing a while back and I accidentally broke it and had to get it welded fixed. So get a knife that's made for it and that's good to last. So I got my set of knives. Again, I'm using the big ones, 10-inch ones. It doesn't really matter on the brand, more so just on the size. As long as they're designed for throwing, they're going to work well for you. And I have my target right here. As for the target, it does not need to be anything this fancy. It can just be boards laid up against a wall or a fence. Just make sure that whatever is beyond it is okay to be thrown at. So if it's like a yard, make sure the grass isn't too high so you don't lose the knives. Or make sure nothing's behind it that you don't want accidentally getting hit. So like no glass windows and things of that nature. One other thing that you might want to do is actually get something that you can use for a marker. Either a couple sticks or some tape you can put on the ground. Or if you're on cement, sidewalk chalk works great because we are going to want to mark the distance away from the target. Because depending on how far we are, it depends on how we have to hold the knife and also how we make adjustments. So let's quickly go over the grips. There's two types of grips that you're going to be using when you're throwing knives, and that is by the blade and then by the handle. There are also a lot of different ways you can throw a knife. We're going to cover the simplest way we actually get to flip. There are other ways where you don't get to flip or you throw it underhand. We're going to cover the bare basics today on how to throw it, and this is the grips we use for that. The grips change depending on how many rotations and your distance away from the target. So we'll start close and then move slightly farther away and change our grips as we do it. So at first we're going to start pretty close and we are going to start with a handle grip. Because for this we're going to start very, very close and we're basically just going to have it not flip at all. It's going to kind of just do like a quarter rotation and stick into the board. We're going to have a nice grip. Get a good throw stance and just follow through into the board. These knives again are made for sticking. You do not have to throw it hard, and in fact you just want to throw consistently. Throw it the same way every time, no matter on this distance. If you're changing how hard you're throwing it, that's going to change how fast it flips, as well as a whole bunch of other different things. We just want to throw it the same and adjust our distance. It's a lot like bowling in that sense. Don't change the throw, change your stance. So we're going to start right here, a quick little quarter turn. And actually be careful if you're starting this close because if you miss and the knife bounces, you are kind of close. So you might actually want to start a little farther away, depending on what you're comfortable with. We'll start here. Whoopsie. Last one didn't stick because I threw it different. You don't want to throw it any different, throw it the same way every time. So we make adjustments depending on our stance. These are all pretty good because they're pretty much all straight out. depending on how they hit is going to depend on how we adjust where we're standing. And that's why the marker is important, so we know we're standing in the same spot every time. If the blade hits with the point down, that means that you're standing too far away because it has too much time to rotate and the blade is hitting pointing down. So in that case, you're going to take a little step forward and that will even it back out. If the point is hitting up, that means you're too close and you actually need to take a step back. But the throw does not change. Keep the throw the same and adjust the distance. So now I'm going to take a little bit of a step back, and now rather than staying close and holding it by the blade, I'm going to step a little farther back and hold it by the handle and throw it the exact same way and try to get it to stick. I haven't checked my stance or my distance yet, so this might take a couple throws, so you can see how I adjust as we're throwing. So nice follow through with the throw. Okay, so I hit with the point up, which means I need to take a half step back and try again. And just like that, that is how we can make a simple adjustment to our distance to fix the throws. I didn't try to change the throws, I changed the stance and that fixed everything perfectly. So this is a skill that is going to take a lot of practice to get really consistent with. It doesn't take that long to get a couple to stick, but to get them to stick consistently and with good aim can take a while, so you're going to be doing a lot. A couple quick tips while you're doing this is when you're taking the blades out, rotate them with the blade. So if the blade's stuck this way, it's going to go up and down, because if we go in a side-to-side motion, it can bend and in some cases even break the tip off, making the knife completely useless. So when you remove the knives, go with the shape of the blade to pull the knives out. We don't want to break the tips off. Another thing is if you accidentally hit two of the blades together on a throw, one that's stuck in the board and then one you throw, make sure you check your knives, because if it gets a good ding, it can put a gash in it and a little metal sliver, and if it slides off your hand and hits that sliver, it can get a pretty good cut on your finger. I know, I've done it a couple times. I always keep a piece of sandpaper or something nearby so I can just even those back out so it's smooth. That was kind of cool. So I hope that game's throwing video while testing these distances. For the next shot, I actually got in between the two boards and it went beyond. So again, make sure there's nothing behind your board. Even with a good constructed board, stuff can still happen. So I have marked off 3 different spots using an extra set of knives for half turn, full turn, and turn and a half. I don't know if that last one's in the frame, but it's okay because it is there. So this way you can see that marking each spot can be useful for knowing your distance for the throws. We're going to start off with a half turn, holding it by the blade, so that way once we release, it'll go half a turn, and then hopefully stick in the board. So now we're going to take a few steps back to our other marker. This time, instead of holding it by the blade, we hold it by the handle, so that way it gives a turn time to flip that extra half turn. Stuck a little bit up, that's because I followed through too much with my chest, and I got in front of my mark. So I felt that, to make sure I don't lean too far forward. And stuck. So as you can see, this one actually stuck facing down. That means I was actually a little bit too far away. So without changing my distance, I inadvertently went too close and too far. So that's just a good example of how your body position can also change how the knife will stick. And finally, the 1.5. So this time, rather than by the handle, doing a full turn, by the blade again, 1.5 turns. Stuck real high, but that's okay. I don't practice at that distance very often, and you can probably see from the height. But that's just a good example of how each one of these different distances can be marked, so that way we know our distance to get the knives to stick more consistently. If these weren't here, you kind of have to be guessing with how many steps, and it's just a lot more consistent and easier for you. Just put something on the ground so that way you know where it is. And with that, that is going to bring the tutorial to an end, how to throw a knife. Again, this was just the most simple way to throw a knife. There are a ton of other ways that we can throw knives, such as the no spin technique, underarm, trick shots, all sorts of fun stuff. as well as other throwing implements such as axes, shuriken, which are the Chinese throwing stars, or bow shurikens, which are basically just big metal needles, which are also super fun. So if you'd like to see those, leave those down below and we can get to those in a future video. With that in mind, we take your comments into consideration when making future videos, so if there's something you'd like to see in a future video, leave that down below. Hope you liked the video. If you did, do all the YouTube things, we do appreciate it. And with that, my name is Chuck Clark, and this has been Circus Tutorials, and we'll see you in the next one.